Hi, I'm Dr. Michele Estes from James Madison University. Happy to be here today to talk to you a little bit about collaborative online international learning. My colleague, Dr. Jennifer Wiley, could not be here today, so I'll be presenting on behalf of both of us, and we are both from James Madison in Virginia. If you'd like to reach out to either of us, our email addresses are here on the screen. Intended outcomes for this presentation are to have you develop an awareness of COIL as pedagogy, process, and partnerships, and as a way of offering insights to instructional design. As pedagogy, COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, is a form of virtual exchange or globally connected teaching and learning or globally networked learning. You may have heard several of these terms used with regard to international virtual experiences. COIL fosters intercultural communicative competence, and I'll explain more on the next slide about that. A resource that may be helpful to you in your own classes if you're using COIL could be these rubrics from AECT, for example, the one on intercultural knowledge and competence. So intercultural communicative competence, what is that? This quote is very nice. It explains it as an understanding of culture and language being studied and the readiness to suspend our disbelief and judgment about another culture. It's our willingness to reflect on our own culture and to question values and presuppositions in our own cultural practices. And by having an experience where we're comparing and contrasting, learners become more deeply aware of their own, often unconscious belief systems and ideological perspectives. They understand how aspects of their own culture are perceived by others and how the link between the two cultures is fundamental to the interaction. There are other benefits of COIL. For example, just the opportunity to be able to connect when you would not otherwise be able to do that with an international site. It can generate deep learning for all involved, including instructors and students. It introduces learners to new perspectives and ways of being, and can form new and varied partnerships across sites. It can even strengthen and sustain existing partnerships that are enhanced through the virtual connections, and reduces carbon footprint of remote travel to another site. And it also enhances teaching, learning, scholarship, and service, and all of these we are probably a part of. So the nature of COIL is that there are local activities and there are shared activities. Locally, instructors list and teach an academic course. They enroll and participate in the academic course. They enroll their students and participate in the academic course. The instructors assess local student learning. These three things are what we always do anyway as instructors. But the difference with COIL is that there's a series of shared and mutually beneficial remote activities that also take place. So course subjects at each of the partner sites may be similar or different. There are co-constructed activities created by remote instructor partners with each other. These activities are integrated into local coursework at each site, but also aligned across sites. And often the activities are part synchronous and part asynchronous, due oftentimes to different schedules for the term and different time zones. There are several considerations that you would want to make for selecting technology in a COIL experience. For example, a digital divide. If some site does not have access to a particular tool, that is one issue. If a site does not know how to use that tool in a meaningful way, that's another issue. You'll have to consider training for instructors or students, or just using tools that both sites understand pretty well. There can be power dynamics. For example, if you choose a technology and the language built into that technology is not the first language of the partner site, then obviously one site will have more power than the other. They'll be able to more efficiently understand what to do and how to do it. Also, you want to make sure that the tool is usable and has a good user experience, not just something that you enjoy, but something that will benefit the users on both sides. It should have an integrated functionality rather than lots of different functions, and the functions need to be interoperable. And when I refer to that, I'm talking about also thinking about the COIL and tasks that involve administrative things such as matchmaking, teaching, which involves this co-construction and co-teaching, learning, which involves a connection to an international site, and having a need for these real personal and emotional discussions, and then also having the ability to collect and use and export these data for research activities. The system or technology would need to have attention to privacy, GDPR, FERPA, and be sustainable, not something fly by night that will be gone next time we try to do this and we'll have to start all over again. Okay, COIL is process and partnerships. As a process, this is what I might do if I were going through a COIL experience. I would probably go through partner matching, or I would identify my own partner. Hopefully there would be some professional development for 3 team members at each site: the instructor, the instructional designer, and the international admin at each site. There would be some selection of topic and course, what would be appropriate at each site, even if it's not the same. Can we draft learning objectives and have shared intended outcomes across our courses? We would co-create then these learning activities for these particular outcomes, with these particular outcomes in mind, and select a technology that can get us where we want to go. Then we would participate, of course, locally and globally to engage, and we may even have a physical exchange at the end of the experience for the people who are involved. And then there may be some kind of evaluation or research happening along with this course where we look at the findings at the end. So as partnerships, one example of a COIL project would be when James Madison University and Kansai University were awarded the ACE US-Japan COIL Initiative funds. ACE is a funder of COIL activities, but I also want to point out that if you're interested in getting started with a virtual exchange, which may not have exactly the same intended outcomes that I'm describing today, but simply connects you for some mutually beneficial purpose, the Stevens Initiative is a source for that, particularly in the MENA region. Okay, so in my example of James Madison University, we partnered with Kansai University. American Council on Education, or ACE, funded the project. At our university, we had a Center for Global Engagement that helped us out. In Kansai University, they had the Institute for Innovative Global Education that really supported their efforts. And then there was Class to Class, a company that provided a technology solution that would be separate from what we would already use at either one of our sites. So ACE, in addition to funding, provided matchmaking services, professional development training for the triads at each site, leadership, and made site visits and wrote reports on the activities of the grant. Kansai University and JMU provided the triads, the individuals from each site. JMU also had a project evaluator and some researchers. But together, the institutions were all seeking outcomes such as greater global awareness, student self-awareness related to culture, identity, assumptions that they hold, that we hold, and wanted to develop further critical thinking skills. Class to Class is the company that provided this third-party system for us to use. It's integrated, interoperable. It was customized to support the needs of the project. It offers a range of features that are unique and not the same as an LMS, but it may someday be integrated into LMS systems. For example, Class to Class, which is designed specifically for virtual exchange and COIL experiences, offers what you see on the screen here, a matchmaking service where you can go in and get connected to international partners. We also used, for the research component, the BEVI. It's a mixed methods measure. BEVI stands for Beliefs, Events, and Values Inventory, and the instrument is intended to help determine answers to these kinds of questions. How do we humans become who we are? How do beliefs and values shape our work, our communities, our relationships, and our lives? The instrument itself collects data pre and post so that you can look for changes in learners with regard to lots of different variables. So COIL and similar experiences such as virtual exchange, they do offer insights for instructional design, and we know that from research. So here's an example of a research project that was conducted with several different kinds of projects relating to virtual exchange, and they have implications for instructional design. In this case, there was a grant funded by Bridging Theory to Practice. It was awarded to Elon University, James Madison University, Crossing Borders Organization, and Kansai University. And basically, what happened is that media from these virtual experiences were repurposed to deepen student discussions. So the clips were taken and made to model and facilitate self-awareness, eliciting emotional student responses in future courses. It does matter who students are when they enter the experience, was one finding. It's important to pre-assess for cultural awareness, attitudes, beliefs, values, openness, traditions, prior experiences, and so forth, because not all students are ready for global learning. If they're not primed, they may focus on validating existing beliefs, stereotypes, implicit biases they may not even realize exist. They'll look for those in that experience, and the outcome will not show a positive change. Students need context. So when you're teaching a COIL course, be sure to fill in knowledge and gaps that students may have to try to avoid any false assumptions, misunderstandings, confusion, or just anything that will lead to poor outcomes, because our mind, of course, wants to fill in any gaps where we don't know the answers. You want to reduce the number and complexity of technology platforms that are used in order to ease access, improve the learner experience, avoid a power imbalance, as I described earlier. More outcomes and findings. Using small, diverse breakout groups for discussion works really well, particularly dyads, where we're having these personal discussions. You want to make sure that when students participate in a COIL experience, they're at their own site by themselves, rather than attending at a group site where there's a shared classroom or a shared camera in a classroom. Also, using these authentic video clips and non-cognitive prompts will evoke thoughtful, personal, emotional responses from students and get at something deeper. This video, if you'd like to check it out, offers more details. At 2 minutes 30 seconds in, for example, there's an example of the use of cognitive prompts as they lead to cognitive responses from students, and then more personal and prompts from peers that get at something much richer and sort of evoke an emotional or more personal response and awareness from the students. Thanks, and I hope you have a great conference.